Thank you for joining us on Africa 24 TV. For today's interview, we are receiving Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, President of the African Development Bank Group. With him, we shall be discussing about the Africa Development Bank's Group's strategic efforts in mobilizing investment for Africa's growth. Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, welcome to Africa 24 TV.
Thank you very much, Ruth. Good to be here.
It's a delight having you here.
Thank you.
You are globally known as an economist and agricultural expert with more than 30 years of international expertise, and you are equally the president of the African Development Bank Group since 2015. How has this institution collaborated with regional economic communities and other development partners to enhance investment opportunities and promote regional integration in Africa?
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Ruth. You know, the bank has 5 strategies, and one of the 5 strategies is to be able to integrate Africa. And of course, to do that, you have to have infrastructure. You need to have roads, you need to have rail, you have to have ports, you have to have digital infrastructure, you need water and sanitation. And so therefore, infrastructure is like a backbone for the economies. If you have a backbone, you can walk straight. If you don't have a backbone, you can't walk straight. And that's why the African Development Bank in the last 7 years, we have invested more than 44 billion US dollars in infrastructure of different kinds, promoting corridors, in different parts of Africa to make it easier for goods and services to move across the African continent to increase productivities, efficiencies, and competitiveness of African economies. And one of the things that just to tell you one of the things that I really enjoy with our work is the impact that it has on people. In the last 7 years that we've been working on our strategy, which we call High Five strategy, to light up and power Africa, to feed Africa, to industrialize Africa, to integrate Africa, and to improve the quality of life of the people of Africa. In those 7 years, we've been able to impact on more than 350 million people. And so talking about regional infrastructure, for example, if you take, for example, we were able to secure $15.6 billion to actually build the Lagos-Abidjan corridor that will link Lagos all the way to Cotonou, to Lomé, to Accra, to Abidjan. And that's where you have more than 70% of all the trade in the ECOWAS region going on. So that will boost the economies of those particular regions. I went recently to the Gambia to see the president of the Gambia, Mr. Excellency Barrow, and we have financed the Senegambia Bridge, which they've been looking for since 1974. And the African Development Bank, financed that completely. And it has reduced the amount of time of people traveling from both ends by more than 24 hours. People used to stay for weeks. Now they can go 10 minutes all across that. So that's the kind of thing that we need to have. A better integrated Africa with great infrastructure is going to be a bigger market, but a more competitive market in all sense of it. And that's why we prioritize that.
The Africa Investment Forum was launched in 2018, and this year marks its 4th edition. Can you tell us its tangible impact on attracting investment on the continent?
Oh, absolutely. First is that I really believe Africa is the place to be, and you have to think about what Africa has to offer. First and foremost is the fact that Africa's population is 1.4 billion people today, and that's going to rise to roughly 2.5 billion people by 2050, and that means that Africa will have at that time 25% of the global population. So you can't ignore that, because it means that that's a big consumer market. If you look at the size of the food and agricultural market in Africa, by 2030, which is just 7 years from now, it will be worth $1 trillion. So think about that as an investment opportunity. But, the world is talking today about the issue of renewable energy. And when you talk about renewable energy, Africa has the largest resources, whether it's in terms of solar. We have, 11 terawatts. That's a lot of energy. God loves Africa, give us so much sun, more than anybody else in the world. So whether it is the wind, whether it is solar, whether it is geothermal, resources or hydro sources. If you look at the Grand Inga, it's a massive area. So these are also opportunities that tells you that Africa will be the place to invest in on renewable energy. Today, the world is talking about electric cars. Electric cars is going to drive the world. The size of that market today is $7 trillion. That is going to go to $57 trillion by the year 2050. Well, guess what? All the lithium ion batteries that everybody's going to need will depend on having platinum. Africa has 70% of the world's platinum. It has about 56% of the world's copper. And they also look at lithium ion and everything else. So Africa again is the investment place to be if you're going to be investing in electric vehicles for the world. So, and when you take a look at it, why do I get so excited about Africa? And the other part of it is look at our young population. We are a young person, and we have 477 million Africans that are between the age of 15 and 25. Africa will be the place to have the labor force of the world. And so if you're not investing in Africa, I ask the question, why are you not? And that's why we created the Africa Investment Forum, to be able to show the investment possibilities in Africa. Don't get me wrong. I don't know. I'm not saying Africa doesn't have challenges, but it's a question of how you look at the cup. Whether the cup is half full or half empty. I always look at the cup as basically half full. And it's therefore we want to present an image of Africa as a place that is investment destination for the world. And in those 5 years that we've done the Africa Investment Forum, we couldn't do it because of the COVID-19 situation. We were not able to do that, but we've been able to attract 143 billion US dollars of investment interest to Africa, ranging from energy, looking at food and agriculture, looking at hospitals, looking at transport corridors, and looking at also creative industries as well. And so that tells you that Africa is bankable in all sense of it. And to investors listening to me, I always tell them, take a look at infrastructure. Everything we consider as a challenge is actually an investment opportunity. We still have 600 million people that have to have access to electricity in Africa. And so that's an investment opportunity. Therefore, the African Investment Forum, what makes it unique is the fact that we bring the project developers together, we bring in the financiers together, we bring in also the governments, the heads of state and government to be in the investment boardrooms. It's the first time in Africa that you have heads of state acting like chief executive officers talking to investors in investment boardrooms. So phenomenal. So Africa is the place to be. And I will always say, if you're investing and you have a sense of the future, and you're not investing in Africa, I really wonder what you're doing in investments.
Talking about the importance of renewable energy, you have been outspoken about this, especially climate resilient adaptation and mitigation, as well as emerging technology. How do you see Africa embracing these issues?
Well, the fact of the matter is that you can only develop with what you have, not what you don't have. When it comes to renewable energy, we as a bank, for example, today, 83% of all of our investment in the energy generation sector is actually in renewable energy. So solar, for example, we are investing today with our partners $20 billion in what's called the Desert to Power, which is the largest investment in solar power you can find anywhere in the world. When we are completed with it, it will be 10,000 megawatts. It will provide electricity for roughly 250 million people, and it will be the largest solar zone in the world. Right here, we are, where you're interviewing me, we are in Morocco. And right here, the African Development Bank invested in what's called the New Ouarzazate. And the New Ouarzazate is a 540 megawatts concentrated solar power plant here in Morocco, which is the largest in the world. Okay, so we continue to invest heavily in those areas of renewable energy. The other part, which we are doing right now to unlock that potential for us, we launched an alliance that's called the Alliance for Green Infrastructure in Africa, because I really believe that we have platinum, we have copper, we have lithium, and we're going to have to be the leader when it comes to investment in technologies that are going to drive moving towards zero emissions, especially for vehicles in the world. But we can't just be exporting those commodities to others. We have to make sure that we actually manufacture lithium-ion batteries in Africa, and that's why we are investing heavily in the green metal space to allow Africa to be a global player. And you know what? The other thing interesting is that if you look at where they are producing the lithium-ion batteries in the world, You look at whether it's in Poland, whether you look at it, whether it's in China or even United States. We did an analysis, and our analysis found that the cost of building a 10,000 ton lithium ion precursor battery in Africa is 3 times less than in China, in the United States, or in Poland. So again, that's the area to. That's why the African Development Bank is investing heavily in that. You ask also about the issue of climate change. Now, of course, Africa accounts for no more than 3% of global emissions, but Africa is negatively impacted the most compared to other regions of the world. Africa loses today anything between $7 billion and $15 billion a year to climate change that we didn't cause or anything like that. But to allow Africa to adapt to climate change, the African Development Bank launched it's a $25 billion program that's called the African Adaptation Acceleration Program. And that program is the largest adaptation program to climate in the world. Okay, this is to allow Africa to cope with shocks like that. We also did another thing to begin to insure our countries against extreme weather patterns, whether it is drought or whether it is flood. And that's called the Africa Disaster Risk Insurance Mechanism. Now we are scaling that up now to $1 billion. So we pay the premiums for the countries to be insured. So if there's a drought or whether there's a flood, then the countries get paid by the insurance companies that we're actually working with. So whether it is, we didn't cause climate change. And I think that the global financing system has shortchanged Africa with regard to access to financing for climate adaptation. But we as a bank, we are doing so much in that. And at the bank, for example, UN Secretary General Guterres said that we should have 50% of resources devoted to climate adaptation and then 50% devoted to climate mitigation. Well, we at the African Development Bank passed that way back. Today, 67% of all of our investments in climate finance actually goes to climate adaptation, which is Africa's main challenge. And so as an African Development Bank, our goal is to make sure we build a robust Africa, a climate resilient Africa.